Know me. So I'm Jason Bauer-Clapp, he, him pronouns, and I'm the Associate Director of the Lazarus Center for Career Development. And I'm really happy to welcome everybody to this conversation, to see some new faces, to see some faces we haven't seen in a while. So we're so grateful for that as well, and really appreciative for our three panelists who have graciously agreed to join us and share some of their perspectives, share some of their reflections on how they navigated their own time as seniors not too long ago and into their current lives and life beyond Smith. And really our goal here is to be able to offer everybody some insight, some actionable ideas and perspectives, and maybe just some reassurance too about where you're at and what's coming, what's up ahead for you. And also for you who maybe don't know us at the Lazarus Center so much, just a chance to learn a little bit more about us and how to connect with us. So we'll get to the panelists here really, really quickly. But first, I just want to do a quick go around because we do have a number of staff here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Patty Woods, Career Advisor in the Lazarus Center, she, her pronouns, and I'm super excited for our panelists to be here. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say tonight, and it's great to see some familiar faces on Zoom. Anna?
Hi, I'm Anna Silverstein, and I am in my second month now at Smith, and I'm the Assistant Director of Graduate and Professional School Advising, and it is so great to be here and really excited to hear from all of you. My small musician is contributing as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellie Mons, Director of Health Professions Advising. Good to see all of you and looking forward to a great conversation. And Faith, how about I send it over to you?
Thanks, Ellie. Hi, everyone. My name is Faith McClellan, she, her. I'm the new Dean and Director of Career Services, and really looking forward to our whole team getting to know you.
So I'm going to put up a quick poll for everybody who's interested in jumping in here. We'd love to just get some perspective, get some insight on where you're at with things for your own process. And so it looks like just real briefly to reflect on this. So I know how to find jobs in my field of interest, kind of a 3 or 4, kind of midway to above. I feel confident about application materials and how to do this, and kind of a mix across the board there. Feel confident in my ability to prepare for interviews, and again, 2, 3, 4, right in that mid-range. Really wonderful to see. I have a supportive personal and a professional networks of 4s and 5s there. So that's really wonderful to see. Yeah, let's get to the panelists here. And so I'd love for each of you, if you would just maybe take a moment here and introduce yourself. When did you graduate from Smith and what did you major in? And also maybe just catch us up briefly on where you're at right now, what you're working on now.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see you all. My name is Zoya. I graduated from Smith in May 2020. Very interesting times. I use she, her pronouns. I graduated with a double major in economics and English literature with a focus on creative writing. Currently, I am based sort of in the Virginia, DC area, and I work in economic consulting. Specifically in competition analysis, sort of that kind of work, and happy to be here.
Great. Thank you. McKensie, do you want to jump in next?
Hi, I'm McKensie. I graduated in May, so I'm a very recent graduate, and I just had my first day of work. I moved up to New York City, which is really exciting. I'm working at Albert Einstein, the Montefiore campus, in their pediatrics department as a clinical interviewer. I'm working on a study to hopefully bring down asthma in the Bronx here. There's a huge epidemic in it. So, oh, and I majored in biochemistry with a minor in Spanish.
Thank you. And Priscilla.
I'm excited that she actually works there because I actually know the hospital. But my name is Priscilla. I recently graduated May 2021. Right now, I am a consultant for a market research company. And I double majored in quantitative economics and sociology. And currently I live in Brooklyn. I moved from the Bronx.
Thank you. This is great. So what I'm hearing is you guys are all sort of settled or starting in your careers. And so what I would love to know is, looking back at the first part of your senior year at Smith, can you tell us a little bit about your state of mind in terms of your next steps after graduating? So did you know that this is where you wanted to be, where you are now? Is this where you wanted to be? Were you striving to get this? So what were you thinking about at the first part of your senior year? How were you feeling? What were you thinking? What were you doing? Zoya, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Firstly, I can't believe it's like 2 years now since it was the fall of my senior year, but I don't think I knew I was going to be where I am for sure, but I definitely knew that it was one of the possibilities. So being a quantitative econ major, which also was something actually new that was introduced, hold on one second. That was introduced my senior fall. So it was a very quick decision of switching my economics major to a quant econ major, and then looking at what that changed in terms of job possibilities. So I'm an international student, which, you know, the landscape is a little bit different when looking for jobs. So that was a huge part of the conversation for me, my senior fall, and sort of figuring out what companies are open to that hire or not. But economic consulting was always on the table. It was more of a conversation of, is it going to be a research track within economics that I wanted to focus on, or whether it was going to be more of a corporate line of work. And ultimately, sort of what made me decide to go one way rather than the other was the data work that I was seeing in professional fields was a little bit more fast-paced, and you get to experience a lot of different things in a shorter amount of time than I would get to see in a research field. And I also just was not settled enough on one particular area of interest within economics to go into a research field. But yes, senior fall was a very quick and rough time. I had a lot of things happening, like personally as well. And I was taking a lot of difficult classes, which were sort of dumped on me because of the switch in major. So econometrics became a requirement if you wanted to major in quantitative economics. So the good part was that a lot of my friends were also international students or economics majors, and they also, you know, were going through similar things. So the support network was very good during that time. But hopefully that hits the spots that you wanted me to hit, Patty.
So that's super helpful. And I heard there, if you're an international student, get clear on who are the companies who accept OPT, CPT, and ask yourself more specific, get really, really curious about the industry that you're interested in. Try to ask yourself as many questions about that industry. That's kind of what I heard from you there. If that's accurate, Zoya?
Yep.
That's awesome. McKensie?
So I was online learning my senior fall. So I think I had a little bit of a different experience and didn't have, I mean, I had access to all the resources for sure, but it also meant like another Zoom call, which I wasn't really into at the time because I had classes all day on Zoom. But it was a lot of, I think, misunderstandings. I knew I wanted to go into clinical research, but I remember I had a conversation with Ellie and I was like, I need to have a master's degree and I need to have all these certifications. She's like, no, you don't. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was a lot of clarifying what my field was and the steps I needed to take to get there. And so that really settled a lot of things for me. And then, you know, I was pretty set on going to med school too after a gap year. And I realized that that wasn't possible with what I had done with my time in college. I needed to really focus in on getting in those patient contact hours, which I didn't have. So yeah, and I thought this was a good route to do it. And I also didn't really enjoy like the job I have now is more people focused rather than like research focused. So I was able to get more of the people side of the research rather than like lab and bench work. So I think it was a lot of researching my field of interest and making sure that I had what I needed to be able to get in there. And just making sure I had all my ducks in a row to be able to start prepping for interviews and prepping my resume and all that the spring semester. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you used a lot of, with Ellie, the accountability partner and action steps really helped you to move forward. Yeah, that's great. And Priscilla?
Yeah, so senior year was interesting. I thought I knew what I wanted to do. And then if you know the econ department, you know, everyone gets their junior year internship and they're like, yeah, I got the job for, you know, when I graduate. So everyone's just like, I got a job. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, I really don't want to go into an econ consultancy kind of situation. And I wanted to do something fun. And I was talking to Jason, I was talking to Deb, what is going on? Like, I don't want to do this. And you're getting pushed to the finish line, but you're not ready. So I was just overwhelmed. And then I started networking like crazy. And I figured out like the kind of job that I want to do. I didn't know my job even existed until I started networking with people. And, you know, they put me on, and I got a great mentor that works at YouTube from it. She's an alum. And she talked to me about this job, and yeah. We're doing great.
Yeah, thank you for your vulnerability and saying I had no idea what was happening, and the networking piece is huge. So that's awesome. Thank you.
And that's actually a really great segue, because I think we're already touching on some of the questions that we've talked about here. But each of you talked about conversations that you have, you know, connections that you were making. I wonder if we could kind of stay on that point for a moment and think about, you know, Priscilla, like when you were talking about networking and you know, some of those different resources that you were using, do you remember any like particular conversations that or ways that you approach those conversations that you can share, that you can kind of reflect on through that process?
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of times when you think of networking, you think of trying to get someone to get you a job. And what I learned is it's okay to learn through networking. Like, you don't have to just go in like, oh, I need a job, so let me talk to this guy. You go in like, hey, do you know anyone that does this? And like, they start telling you things. And that's what I learned. And that's how I got my job. My mentor, she works at YouTube and she's in the claims department, whatever, but she connected me to other people, which led me to other people that she doesn't even know. And I met this wonderful guy, Matt Daniels, that knows everyone. Like, he knows people from Tidal, Spotify, and he got me an opportunity to talk to someone else that gave me this job. So it's never like, oh, I know what I want to do now, so like, give me a job. It's like, oh, can you teach me more about your industry? And can you push me to this direction? And they'll help.
Yeah, I wonder if we could kind of stay on that same question for McKensie or Zoya. You know, you both referenced some of the conversations that you were having throughout that process, and I wonder if there's, you know, more pieces to that, or, you know, particular maybe surprising conversations that ended up being, you know, more impactful than you anticipated, or anything around that idea.
I think my important conversation actually in terms of jobs and job searching actually happened in my junior year. And sort of that propelled a new sort of understanding of my major that led me to where I am. But my junior year, I had a friend who interned in Kenya, and she also is an economics major. And so I had a lot of conversations with her about the work she was doing in Kenya. And it was through a Smith program. I don't know if it's still around, but the Design Immersion program, which happens through the Design Thinking Initiative. And so she had gotten a grant through that program for an internship. And so I ended up actually pursuing that same opportunity. And the conversations I had at that internship, I think, were probably why I have the job I have now, because they forced me to think about economics in a way I had never thought about it before. I had a similar experience to Priscilla, where the economics department, I feel like, has a tendency to push you towards certain ways of thinking and certain kinds of jobs. And I wasn't feeling it at all. And I was, you know, sort of adamant on trying to figure out a way for myself within that field. And so my internship was actually it was a consultancy, but it was a consultancy like I'd never seen before. It was a development consultancy. And their task was essentially to do all the things that like big corporations, big consultancies do for, you know, corporate clients, but to do that for developing economies and for NGOs or for people who might want to optimize their efficiency levels. So it felt like I was part of something that I actually wanted to be part of. I was seeing more people. I was seeing the impact that, you know, the development economics and behavioral economics would be used for. And that made me realize that I really needed to have a certain skill set. And that made it clear for me in my senior year that I didn't really care what job I was doing, as long as that skill set was being developed. That's where I needed to be. And so it helped me sort of narrow down the focus to econ consulting, because I had, some data science background, I had economics degree. And so that sort of justified it just justified it for me to be in a field that has really awful hours, but I'm learning a lot. So eventually I hope it's worth it.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to jump into a question I'm really excited to ask, which is, how does your day-to-day life look like now compared to being a full-time student? So, are you getting up earlier, you're staying up later? What's the difference?
Yeah, my day-to-day, I like my job. Like the job that I do, you have to love it, because sometimes you work 12 hours a day, 13. Sometimes it's like a 3-hour day, like, that's nice. Yeah, you still have to be on the computer. But some days I'm like looking all glammed up because I have to like talk to clients, and then some days I look like a bum. And it's because my job allows me to, like, the culture of it, like they allow you to be you. So throughout different days, I'm different people. But it also depends if I'm working with like our San Francisco team or our London team, then my hours change, but they're very understanding. And yeah, my day-to-day it switches every day. It's wonderful.
So are you remote, Priscilla?
I'm halfway remote, halfway in office. So when I fly to San Francisco, sometimes I go to the office. If I am here, I can go to the office 2 times a week, but I don't really usually like that. But yeah, I'm home most of the time.
And knowing what you know now about your industry so far, is there anything you wish you had done differently as a student to better prepare you for your role now?
Yeah, search fun jobs to do. Like, I really, like, I'm telling you, when you're an econ person, you really think you have to be in investment banking. You have to think you have to be in these kinds of like structured jobs, and that they're going to be hours that are going to kill you. But I wish I knew that there was market research. Like, I didn't know that this was a thing, and it's actually fun. You get to talk to Google clients, Netflix, you get to talk to all sorts of people and do different things.
Okay, that's awesome. McKensie, do you feel similar?
I would say so. I was pretty set on what I wanted to do. I think going into my senior year, besides being overwhelmed that I didn't think I could do it, but once that was set, I was pretty set on this field. I just had my first day, so my hours are 9:30 to 6 right now, and we work with a lot of school-aged kids and their parents, and so we tend to work a little bit later. And we might have to end up working weekends depending on when the parents are available to be able to do these like 2-hour interviews with them. So yeah, it's either a 9:30 to 6 or a 10:30 to 7, and then sometimes maybe Saturdays. And the other one thing that I learned coming from like suburbia Florida to New York is this idea of like trains, and that I have to commute an hour to be able to get across the city. So that's something new that I'm still adjusting to. My commute's much longer than like a 15-minute drive to work or drive to school when I was back in high school. So, yeah.
Anyone else want to share about Zoya, about the difference now?
I think it's like similar to what everybody else is saying. It's longer hours usually, I would say, just because that's the nature of my job. It's a lot of client-focused work. If I'm lucky, it's a 9 to 6 kind of day. If I'm not lucky, which currently I'm working on something that's based out of London, so they're 5 hours ahead of us. So a lot of, like, yesterday I had to wake up at like 7 and I was at it in like 10 minutes, and I'm working from home. So the like there's not as much work-life balance. So it's very much like I get up and I'm sort of at my desk. So nowadays it's sort of like, 7 a.m. to we're going till 9 p.m. Like it's a longer day. But like I've had like working weekends. I've had a lot of weekends where I'm not working. And so I really enjoyed that time off. But yeah, was that your question? Just
yes, that's super helpful. And in your role now, do you have any thoughts on if, knowing what you know now, would have you done anything differently at Smith in terms of classes or extracurriculars, or I wish I had taken that course?
I don't think I could have done this, but I wish I had given it a little bit more thought during my time at Smith. There was a time where I was seriously considering just for my second major to just be in data science, like the SDS major. And I ended up not going with that just because I thought I had taken enough classes from that major that I would need to know. And looking back, I'm not saying that I should have done that, but I'm saying I should have maybe spent like a little bit more time considering whether that was something, that I should have been seriously considering or not. So I don't think I gave that decision as much thought as I would have liked in retrospect, but I'm very happy with my English major, so no regrets.
All right, I'm going to jump in, and I want to kind of frame this too of for students who are on the call, particular questions or things that you'd love to ask and invite the panelists to talk about. Let's get to that next, but I would love to hear from each of the panelists sort of what you envision for yourselves as potential next steps, based on the work that you're doing now. Where do you see yourself going in the near future, or kind of goals, aspirations within your work for the coming months, for the coming year? McKensie, you want to jump in?
I'm definitely interested in pursuing a master's in public health later down the line. And I don't know if I want to pair something clinical with it or not. If I want to do something more on the clinical side or more on the policy side, I haven't made that decision. So I'm excited to be in a position where I can kind of experience both sides of it with the specific position I'm in, and make that decision and, get all the things that I need to tackle, whether that's patient hours or more public health time and community education and all that.
I think for me, I still feel like I can learn a lot from where I am. So I'm not sure of the timeline, but I think at least I could see myself being at where I am in economic consulting for at least a year or two more. And I'm hoping that at the end of that, I will have sort of a clear focus of whether I need to sort of pivot slightly within the industry or do, the similar consulting sort of setup, but in a different industry, or whether I want to sort of bite the bullet and get a master's and then, know which field is the correct one to pick for that.
For me, I think I found my dream job. I just think that I have to elevate in my position. So right now I'm a consultant, but maybe one day I'll own my own market research company. But I don't see myself getting a master's. I don't really think I need it for my field.
Priscilla, one day you will. No, maybe. So wonderful. And I could keep asking you all questions. This has been so wonderful here, but I would love to turn it over to the attendees here, students who are here, to invite you, if you have questions you'd love to ask of the panelists, through chat, or if you just want to take yourself off of mute and jump in. So
I actually have, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I just left a career panel actually. So I hope this isn't too much to ask, but can you guys give me like a very brief rundown of what your careers are, just really quickly?
So I'm a consultant for a market research company, and basically what we do is we make proposals to companies that need help in certain areas, whether it's brand management or other things. And we interview people in the population and then ask them like certain questions, and we report back to the company saying these are the things that are working, not working, and this is how you could do better.
I'm a clinical interviewer over at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. I'm working on a study in the pediatric department with asthma, and hopes to help with the epidemic of asthma in children from pre-K to 6.
And I'm an analyst at an economic consulting firm. And so usually we're looking at antitrust issues, which is issues to do with monopolies and competition.
Olivia, go ahead. I'm going to save my question.
I'm wondering if you feel like there's anything that Smith didn't prepare you for after graduating?
I think, and I don't know if this is Smith's fault necessarily, but I think Smith can be a bit of a bubble sometimes in a lot of ways. And going out into the real world, like it's a huge, I know it was like a big like culture shock for me and all that. Where like people don't always introduce themselves with their pronouns, and like there's so many things. That was just the first one that came to my head. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things that I don't know, I wouldn't say that Smith doesn't give you, but like resources I didn't tap into that you really have to search for. And I think there's so many things out there. And I almost wish Smith had a better way of like organizing it all into one space, but it wasn't that they didn't have it, if that makes sense. You just have to know where to find it or connect with somebody who knows where those resources are.
I think for me, my introduction, so I had never been to the US before I came for my undergrad at Smith. And so I grew up on a lot of American television and all of that. So I knew what America was theoretically, but my introduction to the US was through Smith. And so post Smith, I was not I was expecting all of the stuff that I would have to learn and sort of, living on your own, but I never expected I would have to relearn how to navigate American society, which is a big one. But I think I really learned to appreciate how different, like state to state things can be. And so living in Massachusetts, living at Smith, it's a very different world than living in like Northern Virginia now. So like, I don't think Smith necessarily could have, orchestrated this environment for me, but it's something that it had to be outside Smith that I learned this.
I would agree with McKenzie about us being in a bubble, but I also say Smith didn't really prepare me for like housing. And so, especially in New York, housing is like hard to get. And so you got a job, but like, how do you get an apartment? And you're just asking people and it's just, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Nikki.
Yeah. Okay. I would say, as someone who figured out what they want to do pretty late in their time at Smith and like already finished a major, I'm looking at doing a lot of like picking up some skills post bac, and I'm curious if you have any experience with like, learning something, trying to put something on your resume that you didn't necessarily take a class in at Smith, and how that went or how that's going.
Being that I didn't really know what I wanted to do until last minute too, I would say when they train you, everywhere you go, no matter what job it is, they will train you. As long as they like you, that's all you gotta like do. If you prove to them that they can like you, they will train you no matter what.
I can speak to that too, because a lot of the one thing that I ran into quite a lot is the job descriptions at entry level, and they wanted 5 years of experience, which was really frustrating. And the one thing that I found was like a key to that when I was interviewing is like why you over somebody who has 5 years of experience is I can be trained and I can be molded to what you want to be in a sense. So it's not necessarily picking up a new skill, but it's that I'm a good learner and I'm a quick learner and I'm willing to do it and do it fast for you essentially. And marketing yourself as like a lifelong learner is so important. So if you're going into a field where you don't have this skill, I can be taught it. And watch me like run over everybody else who already has it.
Yeah, I think that covers it. I don't have more to add. Good luck. I'm sure you're going to do just fine.
Thank you.
I also have some questions too, kind of. So I have an interview tomorrow and I'm super scared. What do you recommend I like focus on? It's with a bank. So it's with M&T Bank in their development program. And then my second question is, how's your transition from graduating into like your first job?
I can go. I think in terms of interviewing, my thing, I got one piece of advice that I thought was really helpful was just treat it like a conversation and don't treat it, especially if it's just like a pre-screening interview is what, at least that's what I ran into with my field was a lot of it was like, are you qualified or not? And do we like you enough to like really get to know you more and just kind of treat it like a conversation. Like you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. You know what I mean? You want to make sure you're a good fit. And I found with the positions that I didn't hear back from, I wouldn't have been a good fit for that position or that work environment. And then in terms of graduating and then coming here, I was lucky enough to be able to go home and spend some time with my family before transitioning into the work world, which was helpful for me. I didn't really hardcore start my job search until like the summer after my senior year. But I would say it wasn't that bad. I found myself quite restless at home and wanting to do more things. So yeah, I would say take a break and make sure you take that time off for yourself, because I think finishing college is really, it's a lot to think about, and it's a lot of emotions and a lot of stress finishing up your senior year. So being able to take time for yourself is important. Yeah, and then I wanted to get back into it again, so.
I can go now. I think for your interview, if you can do a mock interview before, but also have your interview as a cheat sheet, because sometimes you forget what you did and what you done. And also just let them get to know you. They chose you for a reason. Obviously you qualified, they saw your resume, but don't try to oversell like, I know banking, because they want to get to know you as a person. And in terms of transitioning, I'm telling you, they train you. Like when you come in as a fresh person, they treat you like a baby. They treat you like their baby. I don't know if it's my industry, but like they're willing to teach you about every single little thing. So it's not a hard like bump. It's just a smooth, yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I think to reiterate what both of them said, get a lot of sleep, be well rested. I'm sure you've done some amount of prep. I never have done a banking job, even though I know a lot of economics majors end up in those interviews. I never ended up doing one of those, but I'm sure there's materials either that the Lazarus Center has, and I know they have those big binders. I never managed to find a bank, like I never used a banking one, but I'm sure they have one of those. I think there's also stuff online on the website, if I'm not wrong. I did work 1 year at the Lazarus Center, so I do remember some stuff. What else? I think if I'm not sure of how to prepare for something, which sometimes I ran into with economic consulting, because a lot of the documentation is on management consulting, not economic consulting. So your best friend is Google. Like there's so much stuff. Just like don't overwhelm yourself. Since it is an interview tomorrow, get some rest, review what you think is most important, and just believe in yourself. It'll be fine. And then as for transitioning, I also was lucky enough to be able to spend some time with family in like the summer after graduation. However, my start date was delayed for my job. So being an international student, that complicates things a little bit when, dates get changed around. And it didn't help that President Trump had a lot of interesting regulations that he was debating sort of passing, which had to do with sort of canceling the OPT program. And so there was just a lot of news, cycles that were kind of upsetting at the time. So given all of that, I ended up finding an internship for a summer that also Smith helped me sort of, I think there was a Praxis Plus program where Praxis was sort of approved for seniors who had graduated in the year 2020. And so I sort of made use of that and found an internship. And then I was able to start my job. So it was a very interesting transition, but I was lucky to have my family through all of it. So came out okay.
Thank you so much for that.
And I'll just chime in and just share, looking at the job description, if you have the job description, and just flip around some of the statements on the job description and make them into questions, right? So if you were interviewing you would want to know a little bit about the skills that you have that meet the job description and why you're interested in not just this role, but the role with that organization, right? And then we'll make a shameless plug for our interview stream resource, which is amazing in the future. I know your interview is tomorrow, but we have some great resources on interviewing that we can share with you at the end of this presentation. But I also see, and I think it was Priscilla who spoke a little bit about the onboarding and your company treating you like new individuals, training you on everything, bringing you up to speed. But somebody, Vivian in the chat posted, can you tell me a little bit more about what the onboarding process looks for each of your positions? How long was the onboarding process? Did you feel overwhelmed? by having to learn new skills, or was it manageable? McKensie, would you like to or you just started, but how's the onboarding going?
So I had onboarding like before I came into the office and then today. So one of the big things for mine is like learning safety regulations for all of these trials and how to, all the safety regulations and confidentiality stuff. So I spent about 7 hours staring at a screen today, learning all that and taking quizzes, which was good fun. And then beforehand, I had there was like a sexual harassment training I had to go through, an equity and inclusion. They wanted like all my stuff for my I-9 and all my taxes and all that. And then from what I've heard from today, for my position, it's gonna be a lot of shadowing, doing a lot of mock surveys, as if I were the parent. Also, I'm supposed to be able to speak in Spanish too while I'm at this job. So it's going to be a lot of practicing that as well to make sure that I can speak to all these native Spanish speakers and get my ideas across. What else? I think those are the big things. It's a lot of shadowing and doing a lot of mock interviews and asking a lot of questions. That was really important to me, was that I can ask a lot of questions to wherever I end up. So.
And this is also a great question to ask at the end of your interview is tell me a little bit about the onboarding process, right? That's such a helpful question. Anybody else have questions for our panelists?
Yeah, so I hear people talking about networking a lot, and I know what networking technically means, but I'm unclear kind of about like what it looks like in reality and like how to start networking. So any kind of explanation related to that, but also like if you have examples of like how you've networked and like how it has helped you, and also just like advice on how to network.
Networking is your best friend. People will remember you, people will not remember you, but like I said in the beginning, don't go into networking wanting a job. Networking is to learn and like to figure yourself out. A lot of people like talking about their experiences. So you just go and be like, what do you do? And they'll like tell you everything. I do this, this, and that. And then you'll be like, yeah, I don't like that. Just like, it's about figuring people out. It's about figuring if you do like this person or not. My mentor now, that it's a Smith alum, now she's like, come all the time. We went wine tasting together. Like you just start gaining friendships. It's not all about just jobs. It's about connections and just, getting to know people.
I wish I was better at networking. I still don't think I have it entirely figured out, but what little I've learned, it was through my experience with like the Smith Ambassador program. I feel like they give you a crash course on like talking to all sorts of people. But like, I think if you're nervous about networking or you just don't know how to start a conversation, usually, like Priscilla said, you can just ask them what they do and they will be happy to share what they do in most circumstances. It helps if you like have, a little bit of know-how about their industry, so you can have follow-up questions, and, it keeps the conversation engaging for you to have some, intelligent questions to ask them about their industry and to be able to probe them further if you have specific areas of interest, or like maybe you don't know what a certain job entails, but you think, that the job description or the title of the job sounds interesting. So like a little bit of research on what they do helps, but it's not a requirement in order to start a conversation. You can always start a second conversation. The first conversation could simply be, what do you do? But yeah, don't second guess yourself too much on it. I feel like you should just start the conversation.
Do any of you, for the panelists, remember like what is the approach you've taken for making that first ask? Because this is a really common thing. I think that questions that we get of, I found somebody and I'd love to connect with them. How do I start? What's my first step? How do I frame that? I'm curious if any of you have approaches that you found that work for you, that feel really authentic for you in how to make that first starting connection.
I think it's mentioning them. people like to hear about themselves. So if you mention, I saw you here, I know what you do, just be like, can you tell me more? They're like, oh yes, I'll make time for you. They're always excited to talk about themselves and like introduce themselves and like, yeah, talk about their family. You'll learn about their dog. It's just ask about them.
I think for me, generally, I know a lot of people like to reach out on LinkedIn. Historically, I don't know if this was a conscious decision, but I've generally reached out to people via email more. And I would just, send them an email, be like, here's how I found out about, or like somebody told me about you or the work you do, et cetera, et cetera. Or even if I found you on LinkedIn, I would generally reach out to them via email if I can find their contact info. And just, sort of just asking them if they have time, like, would they be available for a phone call? Generally, I think I would suggest a phone call instead of sending them just a bunch of things on email first. So the initial email is always like, do you have time? Generally, this is the area of conversation I want to pursue. But wait for an email back and then hopefully set up a phone call. I don't think I've ever sent just a slew of questions at someone. I don't think that would be very well received, I'm guessing. But yeah, I think that's sort of the track I've usually followed.
Also leverage your Smithy title if you want to talk to a Smithy, because Smithies always make time for other Smithies.
This is awesome, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I just want to share some key takeaways that I'm hearing, and invite anyone else who's kind of heard something tonight that wants to share that has resonated with them. Two key themes that have come up tonight that I've heard are wanting more information on networking and how to network, and interviewing and how to prepare. I just want to kind of say that the one-on-one career advising is always available to students, and then 5 years after graduation for those of you who are going to be graduating soon, even in January. But we have some awesome resources on our YouTube page for for both networking and for interviewing. And for interviewing, we do practice interviews in the Lazarus Center. We have an amazing resource that I mentioned earlier called Interview Stream, where you can actually record yourself being interviewed, and we're all our harshest critics. So watching that back is pretty helpful. And that resource called Interview Stream can be located in our Handshake database under resources. And also with networking, we have a podcast called Get Your Smith Together. And we have one podcast specifically that talks about how to network and some recent Smithies feedback and suggestions on how to network. So I would plug that. But something that really resonated with me tonight, I think it's something you said, Priscilla. Think about the skill that you want to develop, and then not so much about the job title or the industry. What's the skill? How can I get supported with that? And to me, that was a really interesting way to think maybe differently about moving forward with your job search. So that I wanted to share that really stuck out, as well as I think something that McKensie said, which is partnering, having an accountability partner, someone in the Lazarus Center, a professor or mentor to kind of hold you accountable and give you action steps. And I think Zoya had mentioned being really, really curious about things you're interested in, and then flushing out action steps to get more information on your curiosity. So those are some things that I heard tonight that would love to talk more one-on-one with students about.
Yeah, great. And I want to build off of that. I'm sharing one other link, which is for students, our professional pathways section of the Lazarus Center site, where we've broken down into kind of broader professional categories, career categories, exploration, resources, information, professional associations, those types of things. So that's a relatively new section of our website. So I wanted to make sure people knew about those. And also, I mean, something that came across really loud and clear for me was just this openness to learning, to recognizing and acknowledging that employers don't expect you to know everything on day one. And, recognizing that, embracing that. And I think one of the biggest skills that people come out of Smith with is this ability to be adaptable and flexible and to learn on the fly, and to do that in community, in collaboration with other people. In any workplace, you're not on your own, probably. So that openness to learning feels like a really strong point that all three of you really touched on, which I think is a really, really neat thing and a really engaging thing. So I loved that you all talked about that, and talking about that importance of connection. If it's networking, if it's just informational conversations, whatever we call it, learning from one another, is such a powerful part of this experience. With that, I wonder, anybody else have any sort of closing reflections before we wind down?
I wanted to plug one more little point. References, I know were a little bit of a big stressor for me for jobs, is make sure you've got, I literally just sent out like a couple emails to professors or mentors I had that I was really close with and say, hey, can I just use you, as a reference going forward without asking your permission? That was a really big thing for me. And I also want to plug, if you're on the pre-health list, Ellie's digest, sorry, she's below me. That's why I'm going like this. So I don't know where she is compared to all of you. But that's where I found my position and quite a few of my positions too. So that's a really helpful space as well.
So this is a great place to sign off here. So I want to say thank you to students for joining us tonight. It's great that you're here, and we hope this was helpful. And to McKensie and Priscilla and Zoya, it's so great to see you all and to hear from you, and your willingness to talk about your own experiences and share your reflections is really, really wonderful and powerful. So thank you to all of you so much. We greatly appreciate it. And so with that, I want to wish everybody a great night and a great rest of your week. And we hope to connect with you all soon.